Goramaigat las Kahirlak and Tarabawayam Falchuk Road, Guji and Shaw and you. Minister, you're very welcome to the House this afternoon to discuss this very, very important issue. I would like at the outset to commend Senator Boylan and indeed the Sinn Féin colleagues in bringing forward this piece of legislation, and from a Fianna Fáil perspective we certainly will not be opposing it and we very much welcome it. I think, I suppose, events have moved on, as others have commented upon earlier tonight, in that the Legal Aid Board have moved to remove the housing assistance payment in their calculations of entitlement to legal aid. And that is very much welcome. And I know some comment has been made earlier about the delay in government moving on this particular issue. And I think most reasonable people would take a view that I certainly would put forward, that in relation to this particular piece of legislation, this government is only in office for 12 months. And by any stretch of the imagination, it has been an extraordinary time with COVID-19, when the normal business of the day, if I can use that expression, was left to the one side, not just in relation to issues as warranted to this, but many other issues as well. So I think to move on something like this within the first 12 months of government is something that should be lauded and not criticised. And I think it's very worth making that point. I also welcome the fact that, Minister, that it has been included in the Justice Plan for 2021 that a review of the entire civil legal aid would take place. And I think that's very much welcome, and I look forward to the consultation on that, where people will have an opportunity, like Senator Higgins outlined earlier, to make submissions in relation to that. And a question I would ask Minister, just in relation to that review, is that when will that review take place? Have you a date in mind for that? And how long will that review be carried on for? And when can we expect then the recommendations that flow from that review to be implemented into law? I suppose in Fianna Fáil we're quite proud that back in 1979 it was the then Minister Jerry Collins that introduced the Legal Aid Board at that time to ensure that income, or should I say the lack of income, would be a barrier to anyone being able to access justice in this country. And we're proud of that fact, and it has been reviewed many times since that, and I commend my colleagues across the way for highlighting the issue of HAP and any other welfare payments, housing assistance payments not being calculated in the future. I think that's a very, very welcome development. I'm not going to be repetitious. Most has been covered that I was going to say, but I suppose in summary, I again welcome this development, and I look forward to the speedily implementation of this. And a couple of questions I have, Minister. First of all, that are you happy, would say, that there is enough public awareness out there in relation to the civil legal aid as it currently stands? Are people aware of what their rights and entitlements are, or should the state be conducting a publicity campaign on an ongoing basis, showing people that there is help out there for them and they're not alone, and justice is not beyond their reach because they may not have sufficient euro in their pockets? And another question, for those that the threshold of €18,000 of income per annum, when was the last time that figure was reviewed? Is it reviewed on a regular basis? And would there be merit in exploring the possibility of having for somebody that's just marginally over the 18,000 approximately income per annum, should there be some kind of a tiered approach, that for somebody that's on 18,500, that's just beyond the limit, that some assistance will be given to those people and people that are maybe working and on low income? And a point was made by a number of my colleagues earlier in the debate in relation to fees being paid to those from the legal profession that participate in the civil legal aid and even the criminal legal aid. And they voiced the opinion, some of them as practitioners, that the remuneration that they would receive for their work was less than adequate. From my perspective, someone as a layperson, I would hate to think that perhaps the quality of legal advice available to me would be of a lesser than if I was praying for it myself privately. And I would like to think the quality of legal advice coming through the legal aid would be as good as what's out there. And maybe you might make a comment in relation to that. And finally, I suppose the other issue I have made reference to the fact that I commend my colleagues across the way for bringing this legislation forward. They asked the question, is legislation necessary? We're all aware of the length of time, unfortunately, it takes legislation to travel through both houses. There is a period of time there. I certainly would like to think that this recommendation would be instant, and what I mean by instant, that it would be in vogue much quicker than what it would take the legislation to travel through both houses. And I would welcome maybe if you could give us a time frame for that. It's not that I'm diminishing or dismissing the legislation for 1 minute, but I would like to think that it wouldn't be necessary in that government would act in such a swift fashion that it would be, as I say, in vogue long before the legislation would pass through both houses. But again, in summary, I welcome the debate. I think it's very worthwhile. And I said I generously commend my colleagues across the way for their input into it. And I look forward to citizens from our state being able to avail of this new departure in relation to the HAP payment sooner rather than later.